Hello and welcome to Organic Edible Garden. It's early autumn, which is my favourite time of the year. The nights are getting cooler and the days are stable. It is, however, time to take out our summer vegetable garden. But before I pull it out and put in my winter vegetables, we're going to look at some of the seeds that we can save. When saving your own seeds, there's a few things we need to bear in mind. Firstly, you can only save your seeds from open-pollinated vegetables. If they're a hybrid, which usually says F1 on the seed packet or on the label, you can't save the seeds. They'll never come true to form. They'll either be sterile or grow back to the original parent plant. And on top of that, some vegetables will cross with other members of the same family really readily in the home garden. An example of that are things like cucumbers. Here I grew some open-pollinated Lebanese cucumbers. I did this to try and save the seed. However, mistakenly I also grew my apple cucumbers and my Telegraph cucumbers, which will cross. Which means even though I can save the seed for this, they will no longer be Lebanese. In fact, chances are they won't be edible. They usually turn quite bitter. This works also for things like your pumpkins that come up in the compost bin. Pumpkins cross really readily. So what you get in the compost bin usually turns out to be quite watery and not true to form as its parent was. But the professional seed savers, they need to grow in isolation. Bees fly about 2 kilometres, so when planting things like your cucumbers and pumpkins, you need at least that distance apart from them. The other thing they use are pollen cages, which are large cages with a fine mesh. This stops all the insects going in and cross-pollinating their crops. There are seeds, however, that I do save every year, and they're easy to do. They include your beans and peas, things like your tomatoes and that family of eggplants, peppers and chilies. There's your lettuces and finally your flowers. It's important to harvest your vegetables at the right time. These beans are now becoming fully laden with beautiful seeds and they're slowly changing colour, so I can harvest them and put them inside and dry them properly. The reason I won't leave them on the vine is because there's a thing called a bean weevil which can go into the beans and destroy the seeds. Also, if the weather becomes wet and humid, they can actually rot in their pods, so I'll harvest these over the next few days. On the other side, I've got some scarlet runners, which I'm also going to save my seeds from. They, however, are not mature enough. I can't even feel the pods coming through, so I'll leave these on probably for a few more weeks. The same are with your tomatoes. The vine's now dying down and these beautiful beefsteaks have got a bright red colour. They're getting a little bit softer and they're dropping off the vine, so now they're ready to be used to save your seeds. And from a tomato this size, we'll end up getting enough seeds, in fact hundreds of seeds, that we can squeeze out of here. Saving your pepper seeds is really easy as well. All we need to do is pick them when they lose that glossy sheen and start to wilt a little. This is a variety called Macaroni Red. It's an old Italian variety. And with these guys, it's just so easy. We just need to cut them open. And at the very top, there'll be a membrane with all the seeds. We take those seeds, put them on a bit of kitchen towel, dry them in a really shady area for a couple of weeks. Once they're dry, you can stick them in little plastic bags and put them in the back of the fridge after you label and dated them. The eggplants are also reasonably easy to save, but unlike the peppers, they stick strongly to the membrane of the plant. When we cut it open, you'll see that we can see the eggplant seeds. It's just not easy to separate, so we ferment it the same way we do the tomatoes. This eggplant's lost its glossy sheen now, and you can see the seeds are now starting to mature and get a little bit browner. And now's the time to save the seeds from this guy. I like to save the seeds for my flowers for a few reasons. Firstly, they become stronger and more adapt to our region, so they don't suffer from the mildew or disease problems. Second of all, we get interesting crosses. This year we've got a new type of zinnia which is almost orange and yellow at the same time. So I'll save the seeds from these and see what comes from those. They're not mature enough to actually pick them now and save those seeds. I'm going to wait another couple of weeks until they die down a bit. I'll pick them in bunches, hang them upside down so all the energy goes into the flower, and then I'll save the seeds then. I'll also save a wide variety of colours. Even though I'm saving this pink one, for example, it doesn't mean the seeds are going to come out pink. But like with nature, I don't mind that the colours are all different. Here's a zinnia bush that's a little bit more mature, and some of the flowers are now drying off. You can see it's now gone quite crispy and brown on the outside. And if we actually shake it, we'll actually start getting some of the seeds through now. Some of your root vegetables are a little bit more tricky to take seeds from. Things like your parsnips and your carrots, they cross readily, and often you'll get a vegetable that's all top and no root. I've got here growing some beetroot, which will cross, but it's not such a bad thing. I've got a type of bull's blood beetroot here, which is a round solid one, and next to it I've got a cylinder beetroot. Now these two, even if they do cross, what we get from it probably won't be awful anyway. It just won't be true to form anymore. And when your beetroots do eventually get a flower head on them, you'll pick it off like the flowers and just hang the whole seed head upside down until they mature and they come off. When saving the seeds from your favourite fruit trees, there's a few important things to remember. Things like your pip fruit, your apples and your pears, they will grow, but they'll also have cross with another apple or a pear and turn out differently than the mother plant. It's not a bad thing, but often it takes 5-6 years to find out whether it's great or not. The same with plums. Plums are not genetically stable, and whatever you get from a stone will grow into a plum tree. But again, it might be 5 years later till you find out how good it is. It's often better to do that just from cuttings. However, peaches and apricots are pretty genetically stable, and I save my own seeds for those. And the reason I do it is this: we live in a humid climate, and I find peaches that do well in our climate and save the seed. They grow up to be very similar. I don't get problems with brown rot or fungus on my peaches. And here's an example of a black boy peach. It's finished fruiting, there's a few more peaches left. But I can save the seeds from those guys and they'll come true to form to be a black boy. What I do is I just break open the peach and get the stone out. Now inside the stone there's only going to be one seed. So I'm going to dry this on a windowsill that's not in full sun, and after a couple of weeks it's nice and dry that I can put it in a vise and crack it open and get the kernel out. You can use a hammer as well, but you just got to be a bit more careful. Once that kernel's out, I stick it in a Ziploc bag with a bit of pumice or sand in the fridge for a couple of weeks. And you'll notice a root coming out of the kernel itself, which you can just take out and then plant in soil. This is a black boy peach which I grew from seed, and it's pretty special.